There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Please be seated. I'll now invite the Secretary to read the order.
Debate on vote number 31, Small Business Development Appropriation Bill.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of Small Business and Development, Honorable Zulu. Please lead the debate.
Chairperson, Deputy Speaker, Deputy Minister Tabete, Ministers and Deputies Ministers present here today, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Small Business Development, Honorable Ruth Bengu, members of the Portfolio Committee on Small Business Development on both sides of the House, CEOs of SIDA and SIFA, Acting Director General Lindokuhle Mkhumane, honorable members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. If you look up to the gallery, I can assure you there is nothing small about those and my comrades in paying tribute to Mayor Ruth Mompati as we prepare for her last heroine of our liberation struggle and a proud member of the African National Congress until her death. Like many, I am a product of her discipline, the liberation of South Africa, and the empowerment of women. Chairperson, honorable members, and guests, after a year in office, we are confident we have a fuller grasp and understanding of our mandate. We shall lead and be the commanding voice for small business and cooperatives within government. Our hawkish eyes will search and grab every opportunity presenting itself in support of growth and sustainability of SMMEs and cooperatives. We await the approval of the inclusion of cooperatives in the name of the department to give confidence that cooperatives are also at the center of our work. Chairperson, we stand before you as radical economic cadres of a nation at work, determined to transform the economic landscape of South Africa. We have no illusions about the enormity of the challenges that lie ahead. However, given the base from where we started and the support we have enjoyed since inception, we have no reason to fail. 20 years since our freedom, we are ready to give expression to Clause 3 of the Freedom Charter: the people shall share in the country's wealth. 20 years since our freedom, the participation of Black people in the country's economy still leaves much to be desired. Radical economic transformation is about turning this ugly picture on its head. We must intensify our efforts aimed at broadening participation in the mainstream of the economy. We see the development of small businesses and cooperatives as a catalyst for economic growth and job creation. We are utilizing small businesses and cooperatives as vehicles for the redistribution of the country's wealth. We are reversing an economic injustice of almost 4 centuries. Collectively, we must promote the understanding that the economic empowerment of Black people is not synonymous with less economic efficiency and lower returns on investment. I reiterate my view that over time, we must engender the understanding that it is natural that an economy of any African country, as with South Africa, should, in its ownership, management, and skills, reflects the active and meaningful participation of Africans in particular and Black people in general. Chairperson, despite the existing sources that point to the upward trend in the number of SMMEs registered since 2000, there's a growing consensus that South Africa's business activity rate, growth, and sustainability are declining. South Africa still lags behind its BRICS peers. In his State of the Nation address, President Zuma declared that small business is big business. For the economic cluster in particular, and government in general. This statement must serve as a clarion call to action and a bold assertion about the critical importance of small businesses and cooperatives in economic transformation, job creation, and economic inclusion. The significant role of small businesses is underlined by the National Development Plan, which envisages that the small business sector will create 90% of the expected 11 million jobs by 2030. By our calculations, small business will have to contribute roughly 800,000 jobs per year until 2030. The chairperson and the portfolio committee keeps reminding us of these figures. As government, private sector, and other relevant stakeholders, we carry a responsibility to stimulate and support the growth and sustainability of cooperatives and small business sector. Together, we must address lack of business opportunities in both the public and private sector. With regard to the role of the private sector, which we regard as important, let us also confront this unpalatable truth. Big companies have for a long time managed to crowd out small businesses through their financial muscle, cash reserves, and economies of scale. For example, it is much easier for big companies to sell products at lower prices and in the process squeeze out small businesses when competing for government procurement opportunities, especially because government considers the lowest price over development considerations when procuring goods. We must proceed from the premise that supporting small business and cooperatives is not a philanthropic gesture on the part of big business. In fact, it is in their interest to help grow and sustain small businesses. They are tied in a symbiotic relationship with small businesses. The diversification of supply chains assists big business to have a wider choice of suppliers from SMMEs and promotes innovation within the value chain. The growth and sustainability of big business, therefore, depends on a strong, smaller business sector, both as consumers and suppliers. An inclusive economy that benefits all is also a guarantee for the social stability that is required for business to stabilize and flourish. We are therefore encouraged that the revised broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Codes present an added opportunity for small enterprises to access the supply chain of large organizations. On transversal agreements, we have identified procurement opportunities for cooperatives and small enterprises and are currently negotiating transversal agreements with various departments to ensure access to these opportunities. The implementation of 30% target for public procurement by SMMEs and cooperatives will ensure increased participation by emerging enterprises in the mainstream economy. The mainstream economy also does belong to Black people. We have made significant progress in negotiating memoranda of understanding with the Department of Public Enterprise and the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. We believe these to be potentially game-changing transversal agreements. We continue to engage other government departments in this regard. On the 30% public procurement set aside, as announced by the President during the 2015 State of the Nation address, government will set aside 30% of appropriate categories of state procurement from purchasing from SMMEs and cooperatives. Hopefully, we'll move from 30% to 100% one day. We wish to announce that we are working with the National Treasury and have set a target date of September 2015 for the issuing of practice notes to implement the public procurement program. These have sat in our drawers for too long. On access to finance, the non-payment of SMMEs and cooperatives creates a barrier to business growth and ultimately to the growth of the economy. Cabinet agrees with us that late and non-payment of supplier constitutes financial misconduct. I repeat again, it constitutes financial misconduct. We welcome the creation of a special unit by the Minister in the Presidency responsible for planning, monitoring and evaluation that will monitor the implementation of the 30-day payment of SMMEs and cooperatives, and will work very closely with the Minister and his department. small business continue to face problems with accessing funding from the main commercial banks based on our people not having adequate collateral and lengthy track record of running formal businesses. But this is a chicken and egg story, because without gaining access to capital, informal business will remain small and vulnerable, unable to develop the very track record and asset base the banks require. In order to ensure access to funding for small business and cooperatives, the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, SEFA, has migrated to the department. This will ensure a more integrated approach towards extending support to SMMEs and cooperatives. From its inception to date, SEFA has approved loans in excess of 2 billion to small enterprises. Going forward, we will assess the impact of this expenditure with a view to increasing additional financial support, but also watching out for value for money. The department is currently reviewing the guidelines for Black Business Suppliers Development Program to ensure that it is aligned to our mandate. We'll also develop a business rescue strategy aimed at supporting small businesses and cooperatives in financial distress, many of which are those that are in our communities. The Youth, Women and People with Disabilities Business Support Scheme has been conceptualized as a response to the specific challenges faced by enterprises owned by these targeted groups, especially at startup level. Women-owned enterprises and youth-owned enterprises have been allocated 30 million each in the current financial year. The funding instrument will assist enterprises to acquire critical assets and equipment required to grow and expand their business operations. On township and rural economies, we have to address, again, the imbalance of the past. We had nothing to do with the creation of the townships that we have today, but we have to then change and reverse what has been happening. Government is aware that small business and cooperatives find it difficult to flourish in underdeveloped areas such as township and rural communities due to lack of adequate investments in infrastructure and lack of appropriate policies to protect informal businesses. Statistics SA survey of the employer and self-employed, published on 14 August 2014, paints a disturbing picture. It points out that the informal sector accounts for between 5 to 6% of GDP, and that it contributed 15.8% to total employment in 2014. Indeed, the informal sector has for a long time not enjoyed the full business support commensurate to its contribution to the GDP and employment. Radical economic transformation requires that we integrate the informal sector into the mainstream economy without encumbering participants. According to the survey, the informal sector provides jobs for 1 in every 4 employed persons in Limpopo and 1 in every 5 persons in Mpumalanga, Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. Almost 9 out of every 10 people running informal businesses are African. In light of the recent spate of violence against some local and foreign shop owners, it is worthwhile to note that this statistics reinforces the view that the battle is among traders of African origin and not in Sentin. The harsh reality is that 79.0% of informal traders do not have a bank account. 96.8% had loans from friends, family for the day-to-day operations, like my grandmother did. More than 95.0% have no credit facility or asset finance or mortgage loans for their businesses. Government, in particular local government, need to ensure that they enforce bylaws without disenfranchising informal traders who have not had infrastructure support. We shall be working with metros, municipalities, the South African Local Government Association, SALGA, and the National House of Traditional Leaders to review bylaws to be responsive to the local conditions in townships and rural areas. The department will expedite the implementation of the National Informal Business Upliftment Strategy, which seeks to create an enabling legal and regulatory environment, provide finance and non-financial support, promote intergovernmental relations to deliver the sector, encourage the role of private sector and support of informal trader organizations, In partnership with the wholesale and retail sector, we shall upscale the informal traders upliftment project, where currently we are piloting the support of 1,000 informal traders with skills and infrastructure nationally. The first training was conducted in Gamalak, Port Shepstone in April this year. 50 million has been allocated for the rollout of the shared economic infrastructure facility and support for informal business generally. My department remains seized with the task of working with local and foreign nationals who are operating in the informal sector to find lasting solutions to the violence that gripped parts of our country in the last few months. The task team that I established on the 26th of January 2015 has made significant progress in this regard. We welcome the formation of provincial task teams in Limpopo and KwaZulu-Natal and initiatives towards that end in the Free State. We urge the remaining provinces to follow suit. We now sit in the Interministerial Committee on Migration, and we are now able to locate our work within the mandate of the Interministerial Committee. The President has mandated us to speed up this process because South Africa cannot afford to find itself in the space in which it was a few weeks ago. I have also taken note of the announcement by my colleague, Minister Patel, in the market inquiry into parts of the retail sector by the Competition Commission. I welcome the inquiry because this sector can be a critical catalyst for the development of small business, but in reality, the high levels of concentration of ownership and growth in the major retail chains limits access for ordinary South Africans to trade and to enter the mainstream economic space. I would urge the Competition Commission to look at these lease agreements in shopping malls that clearly favor big companies and retailing in township and tend to exclude Black South Africans from running and owning these shops, providing related services. On enterprise development and youth development in particular, our mass enterprise creation program is aimed at creating enterprise opportunities for youth-owned SMMEs and cooperatives, committing government departments to earmark 30% of their procurement spent towards growing and expanding youth-owned enterprises in their acquisition of goods and services in fulfilling their operational mandate. The young people of today, they start operating in the business sector quite early compared to the older generation. And the fact that many of them are out in the streets looking for something becomes our responsibility, and we have to make sure that we galvanize them so that the energy that they have is directed in the right direction. In partnership with the Department of Energy, we are establishing cooperatives for young people in rural Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal who were trained in the installation, maintenance, and repair of solar water geysers. These youth cooperatives are now ready to participate in the growth of the renewable energy and green economy sectors. We intend to gradually massify this program across the country. And of course, we cannot do this in isolation. We have to make sure that we work with all the relevant departments to make sure that we maximize what government is offering. With regard to women development, as a department, we have placed the issue of women empowerment high on the agenda. The Bavumile Skills Development Program facilitates for women to access formal training to improve the quality in their products. Participants are supported to either formalize their business or access markets by participating in the National Pavilion or supplying local markets. The Deputy Minister Tabete will elaborate further in this regard. With regard to people with disabilities, we already indicated from the very beginning that we'll focus on women, youth, and people with disabilities. There were no dedicated programs to support this important sector of our community. The department will develop incentives and programs that are directed to this sector, working closely with relevant organizations. We are very conscious of the fact that for people with disability, they always say, nothing for us without us. Franchising. The department is determined to transform the franchising sector through various measures and one of them is to develop more franchisors from township and rural communities. We have started a process of identifying and packaging successful and profitable business based in township and rural areas. Micro-franchising is still at its infancy stage in South Africa. The mainstream franchise market remains expensive and inaccessible to the majority of potential entrepreneurs, Black people in particular. Entrepreneurship schools. As part of our efforts to inculcate a culture of entrepreneurship, we are establishing centers for entrepreneurship programs within the technical and vocational education and training TVET colleges, working with the Department of Higher Education and Training. This program seeks to increase the number of graduates who regard setting up their own businesses as a viable alternative rather than seeking employment. We have already launched some centers in Gauteng, Western Cape, and in Mpumalanga. We are in the process of expanding the program to other provinces. Red tape reduction, our worst nightmare. Government also recognizes the need to review the policy and regulatory environment that continue to hinder the development, growth, and competitiveness of small businesses. All spheres of government should institutionalize the guidelines aimed at reducing red tape, including at local government level. To date, the Red Tape Reduction Guidelines Workshop have been conducted for 102 municipalities across the country in partnership with the provincial departments of economic development as well as district and local municipalities. It is envisaged that during 2015-16 financial year, the department will continue with the rollout to ensure inclusion of other municipalities. The Incubation Support Program. Incubation has been identified as key to the development of a vibrant and growing small enterprise sector by the department. In this regard, we will pay particular attention to increase CEDA's incubator footprint, directing specific interventions to small and medium enterprise segments, identifying and working with large-scale projects and cooperatives, and prioritizing growth sectors of the economy. Chairperson, through our agency, CEDA, we have made significant progress with regard to incubation support. The number of supported incubators continue to increase. It is also encouraging to note that the sectoral profile of CEDA's clients is in priority sectors of service, agriculture, manufacturing sectors. The percentage of clients in the upper end of the enterprise sectors, these employing between 21 and 200 people, has increased from 1.3 to approximately 2.4%. On a special program called the Gazelles. In line with our differentiated program offering, we will be targeting, as part of our segmented support, high-growth entities under the Gazelles program. This program was conceived by small business champion Dr. Tamima Zwai and Dr. David Paho and our agency, CEDA. Through this program, 200 high-potential business will be selected annually. A structured, systematic blend of best practice support will be delivered to them. The best 40 of the 200 will be identified as the President's Gazelles, being the most promising, high-potential entrepreneurs of the cohort, tomorrow's industrialists. The rollout of the program started at the beginning of May, and the launch will be in June this year. On cooperatives development. One of the important instruments that the department uses to advance the cooperative development and support is the Cooperatives Incentive Scheme. The CIS budget of 75 million shall be used to provide financial support to sectors such as agriculture in the form of grant to both startup and existing small-scale primary cooperatives. During the next few weeks, I will sign the Cooperatives Amendment Act to be released for public comment, and I call upon those that are interested in cooperatives to watch out for it, because public comment would be very important to us. On amendment on the National Small Business Act, during the last quarter of this year, we will embark on stakeholder consultation with regard to National Small Business Act. The amendment process seeks to address gaps and any possible areas of ambiguity. More importantly, the Act needs to be aligned to the mandate of the new department. Chairperson, honorable members, in conclusion, Township and Rural Economy Summit is what my department, in partnership with provincial and local government structures, we convene a Township and Rural Economy Summit later this year. This will be geared towards the creation of a master plan or common framework for township and rural economic development. Small Business Colloquium. Last year, my department, in partnership with Small Business Development Institute, launched a consultative process through the National SMME Policy Colloquium. The colloquium sought to consult SMME stakeholders on possible policy recommendations. I've taken note of the findings and will, in short order, make proposal on potential partnership. And the next year we'll be having a global entrepreneurship. I'm pleased to announce that our ongoing entrepreneurial revolution has been given reward impetus on announcement that the City of Johannesburg will host the 2017 Global Entrepreneurship Congress. This will be the first GEC to be held in the African continent.
Round up, Honorable Minister.
Chairperson, in conclusion, I'd also like to thank my family who are also in the audience today, and they are sitting in the podium in the audience for the first time in Parliament. I'd like to thank them for the support that they've given me in order for me to serve the people of South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Our dignified guests in the gallery and members of the public, we appreciate your presence here and we welcome you. However, we have rules in this Parliament that are aimed at upholding the decorum of the House. And those rules bars you from participating in any way in the proceedings of the House. That includes clapping of hands, using of cameras, and so on. Please bear with me. I'm sorry to break the news to you. Thank you, but resume your observer status. Thanks. Manje sizobiza usihlalo wekomiti umhlonishwa Bhengu aqhubeke nenkulumo mpikisano.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, fellow South Africans, I dedicate my speech to Mayor Ruth Mompati, an ANC gallant fighter. The ANC supports Budget Vote 31, the first budget of the Department of Small Business and Cooperatives Development. The establishment of this department demonstrates a commitment of the ANC to radical economic transformation, job creation, and poverty reduction. Adequate support to SMMEs and cooperatives by government and established businesses will enable SMMEs and cooperatives to effectively participate in mainstream economy. South Africa is a mixed economy, driven by active participation of the state, the private sector, and cooperatives. Cooperatives are organized people with organized material and financial resources collectively used against exploitative monopoly capital in order to advance the well-being of the people. Cooperatives mobilize communities to participate in the economy and are therefore an important pillar of the economy and deserve to be treated as such. In South Africa, cooperatives formed by black people are currently perceived as Cinderella businesses that deserve breadcrumbs, a mentality that needs to change for South Africa to radically transform the economy. The department has allocated 2% for cooperatives development in 2015-2016 financial year. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the role of cooperatives in realizing a mixed economy and building a developmental state. It is like sending soldiers to war without ammunition. Therefore, Treasury needs to relook at the budget allocated to the Department of Small Businesses and Cooperatives moving forward. Incane kakhulu imali enikezwe lo mnyango ukuthuthukiswa kosomabhizinisi abancane namabhizinisi obumbano. Akukho lapho ingasibeka khona. Siyakhala sithi sinikezwe imvuthu yesinkwa kodwa imisebenzi ewu-800,000 ngonyaka ibhekwe kosomabhizinisi abancane nakuma cooperatives. The slow pace in establishing Cooperatives Development Agency, the Cooperatives Academy, and the Cooperative Bank is retarding the process of developing sustainable cooperatives. We therefore urge the Minister of Small Business and Cooperatives Development, Treasury, and the Minister of Higher Education and Training to move with speed to establish these entities, which are central to development of cooperatives. The NDP sets targets for job creation at 11 million more jobs by 2030, with 9.9 million jobs expected from small business and cooperatives. The resolution of the 53rd ANC Congress on developing SMMEs and cooperatives through public sector procurement and infrastructure spending is a firm commitment of the ANC government in opening a sustainable market for SMMEs and cooperatives to radically transform the economy. His Excellency President Jacob Zuma, in his State of the Nation address on 12 February 2015, announced that 30% of goods and services will be procured from SMMEs and cooperatives, another firm commitment by the ANC government on radical economic transformation, job creation, and poverty reduction. Our ability to align the process of developing SMMEs and cooperatives to service delivery and skills training would enable us to achieve maximum benefits through well-coordinated limited resources. Targeting poor people who depend on government social grants and free services would reduce a culture of an entitlement and dependency of poor families on government social grants and free services. An integrated planning and implementation approach by different departments and spheres of government would reduce duplication and yield maximum results. Let South Africa use the experience gained by hosting 2010 Soccer World Cup. The Department of Small Business and Cooperative Development needs to speed up the process of signing transversal agreements with the private sector, other departments and spheres of government so that development of SMMEs and cooperatives could be done in a coordinated manner. Honorable Chairperson, Clause 3 of the Freedom Charter says, the wealth of the country shall be shared amongst the people. It further says, all other industry and trade shall be controlled to assist the well-being of the people. The Portfolio Committee is engaging the retail sector and government departments on policy implementation of 30% procurement for SMMEs and cooperatives. The Portfolio Committee resolved to establish a task team to further research the size and the behavior of the retail sector to determine the 30% share of the market and changes that need to be made for SMMEs and cooperatives to take advantage of this policy and participate in the mainstream economy. The ANC believes that the franchise sector in South Africa is a law unto itself and therefore needs to be transformed to address monopoly capital practices entrenched in the retail sector. Asidlali siyaqhuba. Uzophela umkhuba wokunikeza imindeni, umndeni owodwa izitolo ezingaphezulu kwekhulu, kube kunabantu abangu 17 million abondliwa uhulumeni ngama-social grants. Honorable Chairperson, the department is at a transitional stage from being a program of the Department of Trade and Industry to becoming a standalone department that focuses on developing SMMEs and cooperatives. The budget allocated to the department would be used mainly to establish the department, design programs and support services that are relevant to the mandate of the department, and employ personnel with relevant skills while at the same time continuing to provide services inherited from the Department of Trade and Industry. The budget will also be used to assess financial and non-financial services regarding their relevance to the mandate of the department, including their structural design, so as to lay a firm foundation for providing adequate support for SMMEs and cooperatives. The ANC believes that proper planning, building a firm foundation, and capacity would yield better results. Asifuna ukungxama si-implemente izinto esingenayo inyani ukuthi zizoyilda ama-results la esiwafunayo. Honorable Chairperson, transition is a very difficult exercise characterized by resistance and adaptation. The department is experiencing such challenges and is managing them with the assistance of the Portfolio Committee. I thank members of the Portfolio Committee from all political parties for their commitment beyond the call of duty in shaping the thinking and the direction of the department. I also thank the Minister and the Deputy Minister for regular attendance of the Portfolio Committee meetings, as well as listening to issues raised and committing the department to work on improving them. Honorable Chairperson, we assessed the budget of the department on its relevance to service delivery priorities. We looked at how the budget responds to the felt needs by SMMEs and cooperatives, which includes access to finance and markets, adequate support for women businesses, adequate infrastructure, red tape, incentives, and skills development. The committee also assessed the alignment of strategic plans of agencies to the strategic plan and the mandate of the Department of Small Business and Cooperative Development. SIFA and SAWEN had not aligned their strategic plans to the strategic plan of the department. The committee guided them and gave them time to meet with the department and align their strategic plans and allocate budget to priority areas. There is now a better understanding on alignment and coordination of efforts and resources between the department and agencies designed to support SMMEs and cooperatives. The Portfolio Committee believes that all support services designed for SMMEs and cooperatives should fall under the Department of Small Businesses. We also believe that SIDA and SIFA should merge to reduce red tape and provide complementary services under one agency and one roof. In engaging with Statistics South Africa, street vendors, spaza shop, tuck shop owners, and small businesses at a survivalist level, we realized that our financial support systems do not relate to the felt needs of the target group. The Portfolio Committee believes that the use of intermediaries by SIFA to provide financial loans to small businesses at 42% to 110% interest rate on loans is a rip-off to small businesses that we need to review. The ANC believes that channeling loans to small businesses and cooperatives at survivalist level through stokvels would make loans easily accessible while at the same time developing stokvels into credit unions, community banks, and cooperative banks, a process that would result with community-owned financial services. It may have been dark yesterday. The future is certainly very bright. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson of the committee. We now invite Honorable Chance to continue with the debate. Order, Honorable members, I am informed it is Honorable Chance's maiden speech.
Chairperson, Minister, Deputy Minister, honourable members and visitors in the gallery, good evening. Last year I spoke of the fairy tale formation of the Department of Small Business Development and likened the Honourable Zulu to Cinderella. If she took the DA's advice, Minister Zulu could rid herself of the ugly stepsisters Davis and Patel and become the first business-friendly minister in the cabinet. A year later, the department is yet to be weaned from the suffocating grip of the DTI and economic development. At two recent Portfolio Committee meetings, Minister Zulu expressed her frustration at having inherited a department not towing the line. I admire her frank assessment of the challenges she faces. From her speech, you would think that she has been listening to my advice, but the reality is somewhat different. For Minister, it turns out, is the Sleeping Beauty. After being pricked by Kusatu's poisonous needle for daring to suggest labour reform could lead to job creation, her communist cabinet colleagues have lulled her into a deep sleep from which she is struggling to wake up. Meanwhile, a forest of regulations, red tape, and job-destroying legislation is choking the Zuma kingdom, blocking it from outside world and obscuring the economic devastation it is wreaking. For Minister Zulu to be asleep on the job is a grave disappointment. The NDP, supposedly government policy, calls for 11 million new jobs by 2030, with 90% coming from small business. If the ANC took the NDP seriously, it would put the Small Business Development Department at the center of its economic policy. But Chairperson, a senior official from CEDA, which consumes 80% of the department's budget, recently told our committee the first 10 years of its existence had been, and I quote, indefensible. Its incubation program expects to create only 5,000 jobs over the next 3 years. Why? Because the DTI, where it was housed, was and still is culturally inimical to small business. Meanwhile, CIFO, which the department inherited from Minister Patel, spends R1.60 for every R1 it generates in revenue. At this rate, the department will fail dismally to make an impact and be seen to be costly and irrelevant. Chairperson, I have long said Minister Zulu could adopt a narrow view of her mandate or an expansive one and champion the root and branch reforms our economy so desperately needs. On its own, her department can have little impact because it does not control the levers of the economy. She relies on so-called transversal agreements to influence other departments, but after a year in office, we're yet to see a single transferal agreement. If only Minister Zulu could show the same spirited belligerence towards the enemies of economic growth as she shows towards her political opponents in this House, we would be a lot better off. Wake up, Minister. Wake up.
Honourable Member, will you please address the Chair?
Our energetic and likeable Portfolio Committee Chair, the Honourable Bangu, meanwhile, and her ANC colleagues dream of a socialist utopia overflowing with cooperatives. This conveniently ignores the fact that 90% of the co-ops set up with grant funding from the DTI have failed. For South Africa to become the engine and not the laggard in sub-Saharan entrepreneurship and small business development, we must get our priorities right. We must balance identifying and supporting high-growth businesses which can create large numbers of jobs with support for 5 million informal micro-businesses. The Endeavour Jobs Calculator estimates 49,000 small businesses growing at an annual rate of 20% can create 11 million jobs by 2030. By contrast, we would need 8.2 million small and micro enterprises to create the same number of jobs. Chairperson, to find the right balance, we should prioritize 5 things. South Africa is full of inventors and innovators. I recently met Connie van Blerk, an engineer from Bedford View, with a patented device for generating electricity using turbines inserted into water pipes running under our streets. Not only could this alleviate our electricity shortage, it could generate up to 30,000 jobs, becoming one of the high-growth companies, or gazelles, I referred to, and I'm glad to see the Minister referred to earlier. But only if the invention is commercialized and penetrates international markets. The department should be finding ways of making this easier and cheaper. Chairperson, the Minister should wake up. Second, supporting our township and rural economies is a priority for South Africa. 70% of South Africans live here, but due to apartheid's spatial engineering, their contribution to GDP is negligible. The Minister is well aware of my campaign to get CIFA to account for the appalling state of the Gauteng Township industrial parks, but so far we have seen precious little action. The DA would set up opportunity centers in all townships and rural areas, one-stop shops for business licensing, financial and non-financial support and training. Third, we need a different approach to financing small business. Government must withdraw from direct lending and establish a national venture capital fund managed by private sector professionals but with ministerial oversight. As the Chairperson said, the Minister should merge CIFA and CEDA and restructure the new entity along the lines of Britain's Business Bank. This should include a start-up loans facility with incentives for angel investors and mentors who are vital for nurturing entrepreneurial ventures. Fourth, We must ramp up efforts to instill an entrepreneurial mindset in our youth. Our total entrepreneurial activity rate must rise from its derisory 6% to closer to 15 to 20%. To help achieve this, the Minister must put her weight behind the Human Resource Development Council's report on entrepreneurship in schools. Finally, the Minister can have an immediate impact if she persuades the Presidency to invoke the 1987 Temporary Removal of Restrictions on Economic Activities Amendment Act. This act gives the President sweeping powers to chop down the forest of regulations, red tape, and market-unfriendly legislation the Zuma Kingdom refuses to recognize is throttling business and job creation. Chairperson, the Department of Small Business Development was formed to much fanfare in small business circles a year ago. To date, its impact has been virtually invisible. Minister Zulu, Honourable Chairperson, wake up and take charge of your department. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Go tswetsa poledišano pele ke tlo bitša mohlomphegi molaodi.
Muhulisei mutshimbiza dzulo na muhulisei wo minister na muthusa minister na vahulisei vothe na vathungeyo hayani ri ndi madekwana. Tsho thoma riṋe va economic freedom fighters a ri khou tikedza mugaganyagwama hoyu nga zwi tevhelaho ngori ri khou vhona uri ho mugaganyagwama wo itiwa tshi khou tou department zwino zwa sia u khou ḽa tshelede ine i nga ya kha vhoramabindu vhaṱuku ya vha gudisa uri vha kone u wana vhutshilo ha khwine. Ri khou zwi pfesesa nga maanḓa uri kha state of nation of address muphuresidennde vho amba nga 30% ya uri i ḓo vha kha vhoramabindu vhaṱuku mara hei 30% ri tou zwi ḓivha zwavhuḓivhuḓi uri i khou itelwa vhathu vha dzi thendara vhane vha tikedza ḽihoro ḽivhusi vhane vha khou lwela dzula vha khou lwela zwone hezwi zwithu. Zwino tshiṅwe tshine ra khou tou ra amba tshone ndi tsha uri department ya trade industry i vha i khou amba nga industrialization na economic development mara ndi nga mini ho dovha itwa department iṅwe ntswa ine zwiḽa zwithu zwa tshi nga dzivha zwi khou itiwa nga department hedzo ho bala mini uri zwithu hedzi department dzi ite zwine zwa khou ambiwa zwino. Honourable Chair, as long as small businesses are treated with the same administrative legislation as a big white monopoly capital, they will cease to exist to begin with. To think government funding for small businesses will be customized to meet the needs of small businesses in South Africa. Emerging entrepreneurs are still expected to put collateral when they seek funding assistance. Where must they get this collateral, Honourable Minister? To solve the problem of stumbling block for small businesses to access funding, what is required of them must be practical. Vha vhudziwa zwithu zwa dzi auditor dzi accountant na zwoṱhe zwine a zwi practical kha vhathu vho no khou thoma dzi business. Kha ri ṱoḓe zwithu zwine zwa vha practical kha vho ramabindu vhaṱuku. Mimolo ine khou fhaṱiwa kha dzi township na dzi villages i songo vha i khou itiwa for the sake of suffocating the small businesses. Hei mimolo kha i vhe ine ya thusa vho ramabindu vhaṱuku i songo ya kha dzi township na dzi villages ya swika ya vhulaya mabindu maṱuku i funa uri iye i vha thuse uri vha improve vhutshilo havho. Zwino nga zwezwo ri khou ri ri pfa zwi si zwavhuḓi musi ri tshi isa mimolo vhoramabindu vhaṱuku vha vha khou suffocate. How can we expect those small businesses to compete when means of production have been monopolized and controlled by few and they buy their stock with inflated prices? Because when even if by visa the tender hava vhoramabindu vhaṱuku vha funa vha renga kha vhoramabindu mahulwane nga dzi price dza nṱha zwa sala zwi khou fhedza uri a vha wani profit. Ndi dzedzo dzi department futhi dzine dzi a lenga no badela vhoramabindu vhaṱuku. Zwino kha ri ḓe na strategy tshine tsho strategy tshine tsha ri arali tshifhinga tsha u badela tsha fhira hetshi hu dzhiwe vhukando. Riṋe ri vhona ungari zwaita nga yo ndila zwi ḓo fhedza vhori mabindu vha tshi khou shuma zwavhuḓi. How can you even promise to increase participation of small business in mainstream economy controlled by few, which you also as a government do not have access to? Zwine zwine ra khou amba zwone futhi zwa ra amba zwone ri kha dzi committee ndi zwa uri heḽi dzina ḽa office small business development ḽi khou siedza kha ḽi ambe ḽi khou ṱanganyisa na dzi cooperatives. Zwino the whole year yo fhela vha khou balelwa u dzhenisa cooperatives. Rine vha EFF ri khou ri hoyu mugwagwama a ri khou ima nawo. Ndaa.
Siyabonga baba. Kulesikhathi siyochubekisa inkulumo mpikiswano yethu ngokumema uNhlonishwa Nkomo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Namusi dzikobuya ngo ndo pfavhala udzi vha tshi khou amba nga iṅwe nḓila. Small business development in South Africa accounts for approximately 40% of our total GDP and nearly 60% of all employment. Yet it still faces a myriad of challenges, most of which could and must be overcome through great government support for the sector, particularly support centered around the creation of new entrepreneurs and greater ease of entrance to the market. The IFP is aware that this is quite a critical matter that needs to be taken up by the department, and we are grateful that we've noted some of those issues, although the implementation is the main issue that we need to look at. This is vital if the department is to meet its vision of a radically transformed economy through effective development and increased participation of SMMEs and cooperatives in the mainstream economy. When one addresses the matter of cooperatives, one thinks of areas which were started by His Excellency, the President of the Inkatha Freedom Party, many years back when he addressed the issues of cooperatives on self-help and self-reliance. Of concern is that early-stage development of entrepreneurial activity rates in our country are presently only half of what they are in other developing countries. Some key proposals to support small business development are to simplify the regulatory environment, to implement commitments to 30 days payments to small suppliers. I'm grateful that the minister addressed this matter, and she actually ensured that she spoke of, I think it is in the presidency, that there's going to be a task team that will be looking at this matter. This matter has been going on for ages, where there hasn't been payments. We hope that through the implementation of that task team, something will definitely happen. People will be paid, because most small businesses are actually brought on their knees due to the lack of payment after 30 days or actually in the long run. Making government procurement opportunities more accessible to small business is another area that is quite important, as well as streamlining tender processes. I think with tender processes as a country, we have had quite a lot of discussions on this matter, and we would like to see tenders being given to our people in such a way that everybody gets to benefit because they deserve to benefit, not because they are so-and-so's relative. The issue of improving transparency and get rid of corruption is a matter that needs to be taken care of. We need to ensure that issues that have been brought up by even corruption watchdogs are actually addressed, because we seem to be overtaking most countries in issues of corruption. Simplifying the regulatory environment, as has been stated by some of my colleagues, and providing access to debt and equity finance is important. And again, one has to address what His Excellency Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi did when he set up banks like Ithala Bank many years back. Those that have their history correct, they know about it. And those that would like to ask questions, just raise your hand and ask on it. I will respond. The skills gap are also an issue of address. Also of critical importance is the issue of small business development in our rural communities and access to land for small, medium, and macro enterprises, as well as cooperatives. And again, on the issue of cooperatives, His Excellency again stated the matter of cooperatives well before 75. For those that would like to know, you may ask questions again. In the agricultural sector, this has quite a great of potential, only from empowerment and employment perspective, and also as a key driver in the economic sector. Our rural communities.
Honorable member, check your screen on the left.
My screen on my left.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
You're talking of the seconds. In conclusion,
They are done.
this department must get to work in getting South Africa correct. The IFP will definitely support this, and we have a history of having done quite a lot of things on entrepreneurial issues. I thank you, Madam.
Thank you, honorable member. Mhlonishwa Mncwabe, rakela phambili nenkulumo phikiswa.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members of the House, ministers, deputy ministers present, the leadership of different business organizations, the CEO of Small Business Development Institute, Mr. Kubega, ladies and gentlemen. Chairperson, you are aware as an NFP that the decision to establish this department was aimed at advancing the development of SMEs and cooperatives for job creation, reduction of poverty and inequalities, with particular focus on youth, women, and people with disabilities. As an NFP, we commend this decision. We are convinced that a radically transformed economy can only be realized through effective participation of SMEs and cooperatives in the mainstream economy. Therefore, it is essential that this department must have a well-planned strategy for developing and coordinating both the financial and non-financial support services designed for the development of SMEs and cooperatives. The Enterprise Development and Entrepreneurship Program, as well as the cooperative support and development programs, are, in our view, the core programs of this department, and we welcome the budget allocated for each program. However, we wish to emphasize that these two programs must be prioritized by the department, because this will be the only way to create jobs and reduce poverty. Chairperson, as an NFP, we do not believe that the high number of our citizens receiving social grants indicate a success and prosperity on the side of the government. In our view, we should not be building a welfare state, but a developmental state with a viable economy. Therefore, to achieve this goal, we need to reduce this high number of social grant recipients in the long term by making sure that this department achieves its goals, its targeted outcomes, its vision, and its mission. We believe that by doing so, we'll be able to reduce this high number of people in social grant register and start making those people self-reliant. The National Freedom Party chairperson is also concerned about the low visibility of small enterprise development agency offices. These offices are not found in township and rural areas, where a large portion of our people reside. You see, these years, chairperson, in township and rural areas, we have malls being constructed, like the mega city at Umlazi in Durban. We believe that these offices must come to these malls where people will be able to access them for whatever kind of assistance that they might need. We also want to caution the department against spending more money on those development agencies who in turn hire expensive consultants to help our people. We do not want this budget to go to enrich the already rich consultants. We want the budget to go directly to small businesses and cooperatives. The Bavumile Skills Enhancements Program, Chair, which aims to enhance women's skills to produce quality and commercially viable products for major local and international market, is fully supported by the NFP. We further urge the department to fully implement the Youth Black Supplier Development Program, which is intended to benefit 1,100 youth enterprises. Finally, Chairperson, please do not misunderstand me on this one. The NFP will like to propose, will want to urge you, Minister, that at some stage, maybe with your department, you must consider lobbying the House or introducing to this House a proposal for a legislation that Small businesses like spaza shop, tuck shop, hair salons, street hawking businesses be reserved for South Africans only. This is happening in Ghana. It is known as the Investment Act of Ghana.
Honorable
So if
member.
Ghana can do it, why not can you do it?
Thank you.
The
Your
National
time
Freedom
has
Party fully
expired.
support your budget.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We now invite the Honorable Deputy Minister of Small Business Development, Honorable Tabete.
Kamalamakhosikazi. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Minister Zulu, who's quite awake all the time, 24 hours or 24/7. Ministers and deputy ministers present, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Small Business Development and Cooperatives, Ms. Ruth Bengu, members of the Portfolio Committee, members of the National Assembly, Acting DG Lindoguhle Mkomani, as well as MECs and heads of department, head of my office, Advocate Lenzi, leadership of SAWEN represented by CEO Ruth Masokwani, President of SAWEN, Ms. Nanadi Todi, leaders of organized business and labor, Swan University of Technology, 2 students here, Beatrice and Zizipo, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A special welcome to my techno girls from Arthur Blacksall School in KwaZulu-Natal. Speaker, this year Chairperson, I'm extremely proud of my young girls because Arthur Blacksall is a special needs school. It is a school for the blind, partially sighted, and multiple impaired learners from Pietermaritzburg in KwaZulu-Natal. Minister, they are here because they are an amazing group of young girls. Through our Techno Girl program, they presented a revolutionary coffee machine idea that uses handprint memory technology to provide the user with custom-made coffee all the time. The coffee machine caters for blind people because it has braille codes. I must mention that they are now working with CEDA, Small Enterprise Development Agency, to develop their prototype, and soon it will be in the market. They truly are girls today, but entrepreneurs tomorrow. Thanks to Honorable Bekwa for attending this function. Minister Zulu, this happens to your department wide awake, not fast asleep. So I'm not sure those who are saying you're fast asleep wouldn't have these learners today. Minister of Science and Technology, I'm sure you're happy that our learners are inventing at this early age. Chairperson, allow me to take this opportunity to pass my word of condolence to our stalwart, Istwalande Meruth, also dedicate the speech to her. We enjoy the freedom today because of her sweat. She was in the trenches with the minister, of course. This is a cadre, not just a person that we can think that she's sleeping. She's not sleeping on the job. She's already on top of the job. Minister, just drive. We'll be able to assist you. Siyakuba, siyakulandela, sizasebenza nawe. May I also acknowledge this, the opportunity to congratulate Ukumkani Wamaxhosa, Kinzwelonke Sgcawu, and other leaders who are here today, Sithi Azwelonke, ngokubekwa kule sihlalo esibalulekileyo. Honorable members, it is with confidence that I reassure South Africans that we are committed to a vision to radically transform the economy of South Africa through effective development and increased participation of SMMEs and cooperatives in the mainstream economy. We submit a plan that clearly demonstrates how we are creating a conducive environment for the development of growth of small businesses and cooperatives through the provision of enhanced financial, non-financial support and financial support as well. We are equally excited about the 30% set aside that the President announced during the State of the Nation address. Honorable Mulauzi, the 30% is for all the South Africans. But I think I can ask you in terms of the 30% of those whom you think the ruling party will give to this, about your leader, because he benefited in the Limpopo province about the tenders that he received. So you must also critique your own leader, not only the 30% from President Zuma's government. While Minister Zulu also touched on this point, it is an even bigger and matter of interest to women who are hopeful that they will get a fair share of the 30%. will be ensuring that as we negotiate and sign transversal agreement, as the minister alluded to, we'll be able to make sure that this goes to women, youth-owned enterprises, as well as people with disability. It is only when these targeted groups begin to benefit from our products and services that will be truly recognized the face of radical economic transformation. Honorable Chair, support for women in this country continues to be fragmented, but we know that we do not have a single door of entry to women's support programs. And as part of the ongoing realignment, we are to radically transform the South African Women Entrepreneurs Network, SAWEN, to be a meaningful and powerful vehicle to advance the agenda of women-owned SMMEs and cooperatives for purposes of achieving radical economic transformation to address poverty, unemployment, and inequalities. Because we know that in South Africa, our Gini coefficient is it is not closing, but then the gap is widening. That is why we believe that with this intervention, we can be able to support women entrepreneurs. As government, we should honor commitments made at Beijing in earnest by increasing support to women-owned SMMEs and cooperatives. And SAWEN continues to support women through various programs and initiatives. And I'm glad that the SAWEN board members, as I indicated at the portfolio committee meeting, they are not paid board fees, but they do this work because they want to see the women of the country, empowered, and they risk their businesses and coming assistance. Thank you, SAWEN. I hope you'll be able to do this work. And the portfolio committee acknowledge your leadership in this. Honorable members, you need to support this because majority of the population of South Africans are women, yet participation in the economy is poor, and all the other issues that then you come up with. We believe that it is time that we can reposition SAWEN as a public entity in line with Schedule 2 or 3 of the PFMA. The Technology for Women in Business, TWIP, program continues to unearth amazing talent, especially by young women in business. Our 2014 Technology for Women in Business Minister Award winner is Mr. Kaya Kogoto from Eastern Cape. She invented a new mobile advertising platform, Umoye. This advertising platform will offer free 1 minute, 17 seconds calls from any cell phone to subscribers who willingly listen to a 10-second advertisement before the call. Oh, my gosh. How can you say then the minister is fast asleep? If you can unearth this talent under her leadership, Minister, just go on. We'll be able to support your initiatives and make sure that you can support cooperatives. And as you said, we'll continue. I'm not sure where the other members come, which planet they're coming from. Right in the Western Cape leadership, a DA-controlled province, closed offices for small business. It is unfair for Honorable Chance to come here and criticize the ANC leadership that you are not serious about assisting. Under your DA leadership, you closed red door offices that were assisting the poor and the poorest of the poor to run businesses. And they claim that they are representing those people. And the ANC-led government reopened those offices under Small Enterprise Development Agency. That is a fact. You can't change that. Even if you like, you can't change that, but then the commitment is there. And Minister is also driving that process now to make sure that we can open up all other offices and to continue with this. You'll never try to intimidate me. Try it. I've been here for 21 years. You are coming now this year with your voice. Nothing you're going to achieve. I'll continue and finish my speech, not intimidated by people who live in another planet. Because I believe that the South African government is the ANC is leading with good results. We have actively supported creative industries, enterprises, and organizations to access the export marketing investment schemes. We have managed to take a lot of these, publishers. We supported 10 publishers in the South African Book Fair, 10 publishers at the Frankfurt Book Fair. Frankfurt, you know, is Germany, is not here, Western Cape, but we supported them. 7 publishers at the London Book Fair. You know London, I'm sure, very well. It's not here around Kalisha only, but you go abroad. Craft and design. 38 crafters at trade fairs, Atlanta showroom or showcase. You can look at me. I look proudly South African. And I'm glad that this is African Month. This is the work from cooperatives and SAWEN members, that some of them are sitting at the gallery, that are doing these garments. You see, I'm proudly South African. I'm beautiful, Minister. Go ahead. If women can produce such I mean, beautiful garments. We have not bought them elsewhere. They are made in South Africa.
Please
so
conclude,
drive on,
Honourable
Minister.
Please conclude.
I'll conclude, Chair. Honorable Speaker, through these efforts, we believe that will radically transform this economy, and working together will create the much-needed jobs and gradually defeat the triple challenges. I thank the Minister, the Ministry staff, DG, my office, my daughter, of course, in the gallery, and many other daughters and children that I have, and my techno girls. I'm saying, Minister Kuba, awulelanga, ukhona uyasebenza. Dala wihamba le ndlela, you don't sleep, you're a caterer, they don't know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Carter.
Thank you, Chairperson. I actually think that I should just rewrite my speech as we stand here. Firstly, to the Deputy Minister, I want to say to you, the Cope T-shirts are also all proudly South African, and maybe everyone should follow, and let's get rid of all the cheap imports from China. This department has the largest responsibility in government to transform the economy. Unfortunately, it is running on the spot and doing minimally what needs optimal engagement. South Africa needs to invest heavily in training and developing, especially artisans. COPE thereafter urges the government to think of artisanal mining, artisanal manufacturing, artisanal agriculture, artisanal technology solution services, engineering and mechanical services, artisanal financial services, and even artisanal fisheries. But we can go on in this fashion. The key word is artisanal. The need to establish artisanal firms in our country and to train artisans superbly in a diverse range of economic activities is an imperative. We need to see the development of persons, cooperatives, or companies so a high quality or distinctive product or service become available in our country. AGOA provides a 10-year opportunity for favourable trade with the USA. AGOA's aim is to reduce poverty and improve food security in Southern Africa. This is an opportunity for artisanal agriculture to come into its own, providing fruit, vegetable, meat of distinct quality to meet export as well as local demand. This demand will grow substantially. Just to please, for the members on the right-hand side, I'm not criticizing the department here. I'm giving ideas of how we can move forward. So it would be nice if we all listen. In our country, we also have exceptional opportunities for artisanal mining operations. These will allow for the exploitation of marginal or small deposits. This is where government can step in to facilitate access to capital, facilitate the creation of required labour pool, and facilitate access to markets. It can support artisanal miners with legal, environmental, and administrative services. That will stop, for example, the illegal mining. The department has policies, but lack the knowledge. That exists elsewhere. Policy must marry with knowledge for policy to succeed. Knowledge is the better half of policy. According to Albert M. Crisciolo, government must help artisans participants to find their way through dispersed information, understand little known or little understood ideas, access resources, capacities and skills so that policy can translate into an outcome through that knowledge, foster partnerships with a diverse range of stakeholders to build a community of shared values and standards, and to carry out their individual activities more effectively through learning from their peers. To get there, the department will have to use a three-pronged approach to foster small business development. First, organize them into artisanal associations or associations so that they can influence policy decisions affecting their activities. And they can pool resources to widen market opportunities and improve competitiveness. Second, buffer them from legal requirements and providing them with administrative, accounting, payroll, tax, and financial services so that they can comply with all formal regulations without frustration. Thirdly, to introduce a formal system of industrial relations for artisanal sectors so that they too can forge links with labour unions and respect labour standards while achieving high levels of competitiveness. A third obstacle to an economically efficient production of small firms is the excessive cost of electric power. Unfortunately, I'm out of time, so my own speech that I wanted to include, I don't have time for that. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Carter. We may go that side. Honorable Kwango.
Thank you very much, House Chair, Minister and honorable members. The United Democratic Movement supports Budget Vote 31. Kuba sifuna small business development in Quebec. Small businesses are the engine that drives economic growth, which in turn leads to job creation. Official estimates put the number of people who are employed by the SME sector at approximately 60%. In addition, the SMMEs also serve as the building blocks for large corporations. We therefore welcome government's renewed focus on small business development. However, several challenges remain. Masithi ngesixhosa. Uyufumana ekuqala ukuthi masithi oosifa aba babekelwe ukuphuhlisa abantu abakwazi uzachieva sometimes their objectives abaseta ngoba minister. I'll give you, I think it was 2013, 2014, where they had set themselves the target. You achieve a 30% youth disbursements that was here to the youth, and only 15% of that was achieved. And the other issue related to that is the issue enendokwenza nokuthi indeed azikho kwezindawo zabantu bakuthi i-branches ngokwaneleyo. So abakwazi uyi-accessa the service. But umcimbi we-intermediaries, Madiba, out of order. Umcimbi we-intermediaries that charge exorbitant interest rates. They create a problem. Ufumanisa ukuthi now these small businesses, class e-businesses azo, the cost structure say increasingly already. Now when they come to government, but I tenderisha for a business, what then happens is that kutwe no, you are not efficient. Kutwe ni duru. Kutwe ngabane cost structure sezansi baba betwez the intermediaries that delay the process of disbursements. Ngenxa conditions abazathatha firstly, but at the same time, an exorbitant fees about charging. In addition, much more must be done to increase the support and the access for businesses of people with disabilities and cooperatives as well. We therefore hope the cooperative support development program will be a major focus over the next few years. Minister, I saw that you recently visited my friend's business, Silulu Luto Technologies in Kailicha. As a person who was part of that business when it still had just about 5 branches, I can assure you that Silulu achieved much of its success by, among other things, having a symbiotic relationship with big business and government. Therefore, the private sector has an important role to play in the development of SMMEs and in helping to inculcate a culture of entrepreneurship in South Africa. We welcome the decision to procure 30% of goods and services with small businesses. But in is that if azibhatalwa on time, ayizukusebenza. The other issue is if National Treasury, uyakwazi ukuthi yena babhatale i-suppliers within 10 days. I think it was 10 days, Honorable Tobias. Why can't other departments do it? Yintoni libangela babakwazi uyenza bona bangakwazi uyenza the other departments. Ndifuna uphinde ndithi before I sit down, bensandova recently ukuthi the attempts to move informal traders at street. Ingxaki le yaseMzantsi Afrika ufumanisa ukuthi informal traders drive economic growth nazo kufuneka zisuswe kwindawo that we consider ukuthi zizezicwinana bobekwa kwindawo ezisitheleyo. But when we talk sifuna uba fancy and sophisticated, we go to them and lecture them about the importance of choosing the correct side for a business. Sibasusile kwindawo basakwazi uthenga naxa siphuma apha. It happens all the time. Over and above into iphinde yenzeka ufumanisa ukuthi xa besuswa futhi baya-abuswa by the law enforcement agencies. Xa zibasusa zibaphathe ngendlela ingathi bophula umthetho kokuthengisa izinto bezama ukuphila. Ndiyabulela.
Thank you, Honorable Kwango. Honorable Ramokhwas.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, the Honorable Chair, Honorable Members of the House, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. The ANC unconditionally support the budget vote. Secondly, Chairperson, yes, small business is big business. So was said by the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Jacob Zuma during the State of the Address, State of the Nation Address. Indeed, small businesses, big business. Thirdly, it is only the ANC and President Zuma's kingdom that have laid the foundation, as you call it, that have brought in place the environment that you think today you can think better than what we are doing. Indeed, South Africa is a better place than ever before. Thank you. Chairperson, the Constitution as adopted in 1996 enjoys the respect of the overwhelming majority of the population. And this is seen as the canvas upon which South Africa's freedom of spirit can find expression. Some within the ranks of those who were privileged under apartheid may harbor ill feelings towards the process of change and always demonstrate racist attitude and hopeless arrogance. We continue to see pockets of ethnic chauvinism and regionalism that manifest itself as new forum under new condition. The ANC will never allow these tendencies under the democratic order to happen, never and never. And one great economist, if I may quote Rosa Luxemburg, when describing the evils of capitalism, she was explaining and describing the evils of capitalism. And she said, there is nothing worse than not being enough exploited. Now, this was referring to some of the people who are coming from serious exploitations today, and they still believe that that was not enough. They still need more. And as I'm looking this side, I see some of them when I look this side, because they are saying this is not enough. Repeat happy. They ask that. And watch, my brothers, that is the DA. They will do it. Honorable Chairperson, in meeting social need under macro-social task, the following have to be achieved. Continuous service improvement to people through enhanced public infrastructure, efficient systems, and the requisite personnel. This will need a coordinated approach between the Department of Higher Education and Small Business and Cooperative Department to urgently set up a corporate academy of business to begin to provide training for business skills, which is a challenge to the majority of the country's small business entrepreneurs. In line with the ANC 53rd National Conference held in Mangaung, the following was stated, and it was a conference resolution. And I quote, "We must continue to encourage the creation of new businesses, cooperatives, and the expansion of small businesses by reducing the cost of compliance with government regulations. Make it easier for companies to do business with government, making sure that government pays its invoices on time, and strengthening the role of our development finance institution." The Chair have said it. We move, Chair, that or propose that that cooperative bank must actually be urgently established so that the issues about cooperatives are actually receiving an attention that they need. Chairperson, outcome 4 focus on the creation of decent employment through inclusive economic growth. And this is in line with NDP's long-term vision 2030 to accelerate the gross domestic product growth so that unemployment and inequality can be reduced and more inclusive society must be created. Chairperson, in the same vein, the development of SMMEs and cooperatives will be the critical instrument to achieve decent employment through inclusive economic growth. Honorable Chairperson, the democratic government of the ANC passed the Intergovernmental Relations Act to allow different spheres of government to work together so that service delivery is accelerated and efficient enough to address loan red tapes where service providers had to be paid for service they have delivered. This is affecting up-and-coming SMMEs and cooperatives to the extent that some have to close shops and business due to non-payment or late payment by State Department. This matter needs an urgent attention. The President have said it also. Coupled with that is the development and enforcement of bylaws by local government regarding small business licenses, hygienic health hazard issues, provision of business sites and services where needed, and urgent development of the strategy to formalize the non-formal traders, which we refer to as survivalists, is needed as soon as yesterday to accommodate them also for government support, e.g. incentive schemes. I think we have mentioned it, Chairperson and the Minister, so we're saying we support also the issue of looking at the regulations, the legislations. If need be that an amendment must be made, let it be. We want to see survivalists also having a space in the economy of the country. Honorable Chairperson, I want to say Honorable Chance today wants to display himself as a person who can deliver better to our people. But he has failed for many, many years ago because now the environment is conducive. He feels strongly that he can do things better for black people, which he has always suppressed for so many years. I think we are not going to allow you that space. You are going to be our processors.
On a point of order.
Let me deal with the LED Chairperson.
Excuse me. Is it parliamentary for the honourable member at the podium to basically say that the honourable Chance has suppressed black people? What evidence have you got? You're insulting an honourable member, and I would respectfully request that he withdraws that comment. It has no basis in fact.
Honourable Ramukhwasa, please withdraw that.
I withdraw, Chair.
Don't refer to an honourable member. Refer to the party if you want to do so, but not an honourable member.
Thank you, Chair. I refer to the party that it have suppressed the people for so many years, and today the party feels that, and today the same party feels that it can do better because the ANC have created...
Please conclude.
And Chair, let me deal with the LED local government issues because this is a space created to specifically deal with the local government issues.
Conclude.
Chair, in conclusion, this notion is supported by great economists in the world called Frederick List, nicknamed father of the infant industry. He said, and I quote, "Only large and popular states in the moderate climate zones were capable of development and state in hot zones ought to specialize in the provision of foodstuffs and agricultural raw material, and therefore, competition at home and protection against overwhelming competition abroad have worked wonders." The ANC support the budget. Thank you.
Honourable Mishra.
Chairperson, almost all countries with growing economies have small, medium, and micro enterprises as an important source of employment and economic growth. South Africa is unfortunately lagging behind on this front. To correct this, the Department of Small Business Development was established and mandated to promote and develop SMMEs and cooperatives that would participate effectively in the mainstream economy and make them the cornerstone of the economy. This is in line with the National Development Plan that states that 90% of jobs in our country will be created through small businesses and cooperatives by 2030. In Asia, for example, SMMEs reportedly make up 95% of all corporations and employ up to 80% of the labor force, which contributes almost 60% to their gross domestic product. On the other hand, our country, which is lagging behind with SMMEs, is only about 50% of employment opportunities. Experts have identified government policies, lack of financial support, and inadequate education and training as the three most important factors constraining entrepreneurship in South Africa. They recommend that legislation and streamlining administrative processes They recommend that legislation and streamlining of administrative processes that impact on entrepreneurship activity should be simplified and all inhibitive red tape be drastically reduced. On average, it takes between 19 to 22 days to register and run a business in South Africa, while in BRICS countries and developing countries such as Mauritius, it takes only 6 days to start and run a business. The ACDP believes that a culture of entrepreneurship has to be inculcated in our children from an early age. We agree with those who are calling for the introduction of entrepreneurship education from basic school level right up to tertiary education, because there is a direct link between education and entrepreneurial activity. We must cultivate an entrepreneurial mindset in our young people so that when they finish high school, they will consider starting their own businesses rather than just looking for a job. The South African job market is saturated with unemployable youth because of their inadequate education and training and lack of entrepreneurial skills. According to Tukasipreneur's 2015 series, about 60% of South Africa's unemployment comes from townships and informal settlements, and only 25% of money generated in the townships is spent there. We should find ways of increasing the percentage of money spent in the townships, particularly on infrastructure, so that there can be more development and upgrading of townships and informal settlements. During the committee's oversight visit to different provinces, we were exposed to challenges facing township entrepreneurs. These challenges include lack of access to finances, lack of access to markets, and what they call unfair competition, as they are competing against well-funded and well-organized foreign entrepreneurs. This, they lament, denies them opportunities to develop and grow their small businesses. Allegations that their competitors who just arrived on the scene are subsidized heavily and therefore must be investigated thoroughly. The ACDP appeals to the Honourable Minister to look at the possibility of subsidizing and giving support services to survivalist enterprises such as street vendors, spaza shops, tuck shops, and other township entrepreneurs who are struggling to keep their heads above the water. The ACDP will support this budget vote to help transform townships into self-sufficient and vibrant economies that will participate effectively in the mainstream economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Commissioner. Honourable November.
Kaya Yosis, Kainsa Chairperson, Kainsa Minister, Kainsa Deputy Minister, Kainsa members, officials, and guests in the gallery. The ANC supports this budget vote. Sifuna lo mntwana angafi ezalwa siyaqhuba thina. Die debat gaan oor klein besighede en koöperatiewe ontwikkeling. En my taak is spesifiek om oor vroue netwerk te debatteer sou wen. Die vroue in Suid-Afrika het 'n baie lang pad geloop om tot by hierdie punt te kom. Agbare voorsitter, daar was geen kommunikasie, geen ondersteuning en geen respek vir vroue tot daar 'n strale liggie en toe 'n lig nadat die ANC-regering in bewind gekom het. Daarom is ek baie trots om 'n ANC-lid te wees. The department has a gender unit that is responsible for development of women business through networking and exhibitions aimed at building the capacity of women-owned businesses as well as facilitating access to markets. The gender unit is aligned to SAWEN, an NGO that supports women-owned businesses and cooperatives. SAWEN provides non-financial services. Financial services to women-owned businesses are provided by Isivande. We commend the ANC government for identifying the need for paying a special attention to development of women in business. Women constitute 52% of South African population. The 28 National Income Dynamic Study, which looked at both income poverty and multidimensional poverty, found that there is a large gender poverty gap in terms of income, tend to be up to 30% poorer than men. At the household level, there is an even larger poverty gap. Households headed by women are between 38% and more than 100% poorer than households headed by men. Many women from poor households start their own survivalist income generation projects. Some resort to sex work to earn an income, and many survive on government social grants. Young girls from poor families depend on dignity packs provided by government. This situation points to a need for a distinct and effective response in developing women-owned businesses and helping them to learn from one another. The ANC government is therefore correct in establishing a standalone Department of Small Businesses Development and mandate it to prioritize development SMEs and cooperatives by women. The Portfolio Committee on Small Business Development assessed the strategic plans of SAWEN and Isivande to determine the relevance of support services provided to women and how those services relate to the mandate of the department, and in particular the gender unit in the department. SAWEN is allocated about 16 million. Isivande is allocated about 8.8 million for 2015-2016 financial year. Incinci ke kakhulu loo mali komama, siyakhala madoda. This budget is too small to address the needs of women and make a meaningful contribution on poverty reduction and job creation. We commend efforts by the Department of Trade and Industry to develop women-owned SMEs and cooperatives. Today we have women-owned companies participating in building of trains, building of houses, manufacturing and installation of solar heater geysers. We have women in mining, women in exporting and shipping business. The ANC believes that both SAWEN and Isivande need to focus more on developing women who are grassroots level where there is more poverty. Sile committee ke salikhenketha elomzansi kuba besifuna ukuzanelisa sithethe esikwaziyo singqine esikubonileyo. Ukuba ithuba belingandivumela ngendinibalisela ngendawo ekuthiwa yiSharp apho kusebenza khona abantu abakhubazekileyo, noHanga no more apho kusebenza khona omama. Street vendors and spaza shops, businesses in townships, informal settlements and rural areas are struggling. They are experiencing competition that has not been there in the past. Therefore, our support services need to speak to that reality. Stockfields in our country operate on the consumer side, yet they have enormous savings power because they are organized groups of people built on trust and mutual interests. We need to build on this solid foundation to facilitate the establishment of consumer cooperatives and community banks to make our financial resources rotate in our communities. We need to assist our people with adequate infrastructure and financial support.
Please
The
conclude.
ANC,
Please conclude.
the ANC in its 53rd Congress held in Mangaung resolved to develop SMMEs and cooperatives through public procurement and infrastructure spending. In conclusion, we need to sharpen the skills of women through training. Kayanos.
Thank you, Honorable November. Honorable Mbinda.
Honorable Chair, honorable members, Minister, Nama Africa Ubans. The plight of small business development is access to finance, access to market, and access to expertise. Considering that as the PAC, we are of the view that the current paradigm on which we are trying to support small business has been that of apartheid. We continue from the paradigm which says that small businesses should stay as survival businesses. We are not planning to make small businesses big businesses. We see that government-owned wholesale funding is impeded by using the traditional banks, which we have criteria that are impossible for particularly small African businesses. Furthermore, these banking facilities have interest rates that are impossible high. This certainly guarantees that small businesses will not survive if they are to borrow money. These terms look like they are supporting the development of small businesses, yet they are buying small businesses with super high interests. Moreover, these financial branches are not accessible to the small businesses. They are located far and only found in big metropolis. They should be accessible not only to the elitists. Although there are numerous grants that are made available to small businesses, they are highly inaccessible. There is no information flow to these same businesses about the grants. So as the PAC, we are calling that all forms must be available in all languages so that our people, they do not complete forms in foreign languages. The markets for small businesses have not been made available, particularly in the manufacture and agricultural businesses. These businesses have difficulty in finding wholesalers to put their products in mass markets that makes them grow. The market is enhanced by big kings who are sticking to the apartheid supply chain partners. Even places to trade have been made very expensive with access to property. Business rentals are too high for small business owners, resulting in them being stifled out of the market. As much as there are many vouchers given to businesses for training, the relevance of this training is questionable. The training that is provided to small businesses is more for corporate employees rather than entrepreneurial, and the spirit in which training is provided, and spirit in which training is provided for someone to attain a certificate rather than attaining a new behavior of conducting business. As the PAC, we feel that the whole regime of Skills Development Act has not been pushed enough from an entrepreneurial perspective. The new department has not asserted itself well yet. It still operates like it is a component of the Department of Trade and Industry. It continues in a manner like it is serving big business than looking after small businesses. It has to cut a lot of bureaucratic issues that were created for corporations if it wants to succeed. Thank you, Honorable.
Honorable Kruger.
Chairperson, exactly 1 year ago, Minister Lindiwe Zulu took the reins of the newly created Small Business Development Ministry. mandated to support and promote small businesses as the primary vehicles for job creation. Her department began on this journey. Sadly, 1 year later, and we have nothing to show, besides a talk shop here and there. Agbare voorsitter, die feit dat 'n tamatie 'n vrug is kennis. Om nie 'n tamatie in 'n vrugteslaai te gebruik nie, is wysheid. Dat rompslomp, oftewel red tape, 'n groot struikelblok vir kleinsakeontwikkeling is algemene kennis. Om daarvan ontslae te raak, wens ek die agbare minister hoop en wysheid toe. The formula is simple. Small businesses create jobs. However, in South Africa, most new small businesses fail to grow. We have one of the highest failure rates in the world, at 72%, as was stated by Minister Davis. Whenever I have been out talking to business, they all say the same thing. The biggest hindrance to success of small businesses is red tape and regulation. Red tape is a hidden tax that kills job and suffocates business. During this critical time, when businesses are looking for ways to grow while keeping costs down, we must cut business loose from unnecessary red tape so that they can do what they do best, create jobs, invest, innovate, and grow. Our economy depends on it. And Minister, every unemployed South Africa depends on it. The Economic Freedom of the World's 2014 annual report gives South Africa a shamefully low 4 out of 10 red tape rating. In a recent released World Bank report, Doing Business Report 2015, South Africa ranked 64th out of 189 countries with regards to the ease of starting a business, down from 56 the previous year. The drop in the ranking for ease of starting a business highlights the challenges in red tape that business owners need to overcome when starting a business. It takes an average 19 days to register a new business, which is roughly a week longer than it takes in other countries. Chairperson, small businesses are facing tough times. Regulatory burden is increasing, particularly the observance of labor laws. 81% of CCMA cases involve small businesses. A typical firm is taken to the CCMA twice a year to resolve the dispute, meaning that 10 business days are wasted. Under all economic circumstances, regulatory efficiency and clarity are crucial objectives for the credibility of the government's role in the marketplace. However, in today's economy, it's absolutely essential to design a regulatory structure that protects the well-being of our citizens without imposing unnecessary cost on business and society as a whole. In 2007, the government launched a program of action that included the implementation of a pilot regulatory impact assessment system. The decision to introduce a RIA system was based on the recommendation of a report entitled Counting the Cost of Red Tape in South Africa, commissioned by the Presidency back in 2004. The study revealed, amongst other things, the following. Compliance cost business 6.5% of GDP, which amount to 79 billion rand. 30% of the respondents believe that the complexity of compliance process was the most important constraint to grow and facing their business. 1 out of 5 of the respondents said they would avoid regulatory compliance by reducing the levels of employment in their business. Despite sporadic efforts and guidelines for the implementation of RIA issued by the Presidency, no significant impact in the reduction of red tape materialized. Government must implement a red tape reduction plan, Minister, that commits to improve service delivery and accountability. Business must know exactly how long they must wait for permits, licenses, and other requirements dreamed up by bureaucrats, and this must be made available and accessible on the government's websites. Government must keep track of just how much red tape they are cutting and how much progress they are making in improving service delivery, in lessening the burden of small business. Due to the 11-year delay in implementing RIA in its entirety, I will this year introduce a private member's bill before this House to make RIA assessments required by law. Chairperson, red tape is the silent killer of jobs, and the DA will not allow this to continue any longer. I thank you.
Honorable Mabasa.
Sometimes, Chairperson, mutshami wa xitulu wena tatana Mdakane, holobye manana Zulu, xandla xa holobye manana Thabethe, mutshami wa xitulu wa komiti manana Bengu, acting DG tatana Nkumane, vayeni va hina na mixeweta. Infrastructure i masungulo eka nhluvukiso no aka vuntshwa, i masungulo na nsirhelelo eka bindzu rin'wana na rin'wana. When Sanlams of this world, when KWVs of this world were built through cooperatives, there was nothing wrong, because it was to benefit few whites at the expense of many blacks. But IFP through Manana Nkomo, NFP through Ntate Mngwabe, and Ntate Nkwankwa from UDM, and ACDP Ntate Mishwe, because you support this budget, your comments become constructive, because you are saying we support the budget and then we add these comments. But the other parties that don't support the budget, I don't know what they want. But in case some of them have forgotten, some anecdotes go as follows. A book written by Roskam, Apartheid and Discrimination. Sometimes we may think Dr. Verwoerd was the architect of all these evils. He was not. He merely perfected what the predecessors of apartheid started. Rhodes said, I contend that we British are the first race in the world, and that the more of the world we inhabit, the better it is for human race. Evans said the races are so different in capacity, character, and culture that identical treatment is impossible. As if it was not enough, smarts followed. There are certain things about which all South Africans are agreed. All parties and all sections except those who are quite mad. The first is that it is a fixed policy to maintain white supremacy in South Africa. But just to go for two more, the Thomson report said the presence of Africans will only be tolerated because of the needs of the whites for their labor. Otherwise, all Africans should be at those
homelands where they have been put on rocks, where they have been put on land that is not arable. Here we go to small business. Yes, United Party said discrimination or differentiation in itself is not necessary and evil. The all-important question is the basis on which it is done and the motive behind it. These are the people who know what seeds they have planted in South Africa. Hence, we now as ANC have a job of repairing and working on all what they have planted. Infrastructure, even big business rely on infrastructure provided by government. And that's how big business has grown. The highways, the rail, electricity, bridges, and by the way, this electricity went over the mountains and over the huts and houses of black people, going to a farmer, Swanepoel, having crossed many villages. It is only with the ANC that this electricity went to those rural areas. It is only with the ANC that this water, piped water, started to go to even rural areas. It is only with the ANC that the blackjacks, the police that were serving National Party, stopped knocking every door and saying, Goga Vuga Sambe. ANC has come with that solution. It is only the ANC that has said even small businesses will be allowed to trade in town. It is only the ANC that said it was wrong in Free State when Indian people were not allowed to trade. It is the ANC that said, Indian people, black people, you can trade everywhere. Swiphaza leswi a swi fanelangi ku tshama swi ri swintsongo vutomi bya swona hinkwabyo. Swi fanele ku kula. Maphorisa va fanele ku ta na pulani ya ku sirheleta swiphaza leswaku lava va yivaku va nga yivi mpahla leyi ya vanhu lava va xaviselaku a swiphaza. Masipala va fanele ku pfuneta hi ku basisa minkarhi hinkwayo. Hygiene yi fanele yi va kona leswaku na Department of Health a yi tshineli yi tirhisana na swiphaza shops. A yi tshineli yi tirhisana na vamanana lavaya va xavisaka maapulu na swifaki leswaku health ya South Africa yi kula na mabindu ya vona ya kula. The challenge is to collaborate with street vendors, plan with street vendors, get a buy-in from them so that a plan that gets implemented receives mutual support. As we all say, nothing about us without us. Government needs to plan with street vendors and not plan for them. In many parts of the world, the economy thereof is shouldered by small businesses and cooperatives. In Kenya, families that keep dairy cattle make a living out of that. A family that keeps about 10 cattle is as good as rich. And these are the families that milk the cattle. They deliver the milk at the central dairy depot. One big truck goes around the village collecting milk to deliver it at the central dairy place where it is tested for freshness and bacteria to be bacteria free. And that way the whole village is producing milk. That way the milk that they produce is turned into full cream milk, cheese, yogurt, low-fat free. And in that process, you see a value chain, right from the rearing of the cattle, milking of the cattle, sending to the dairy as well as producing cheese and yogurt. Let me speak about the triple PFA. This act is disempowering to black-owned small businesses, in particular, in that it imposes the burden of the price element over other key elements of the triple PFA, such as ownership and technical competence. In places traditionally white-owned businesses who are thus able to cut out and outcompete smaller businesses because of their production of critical mass and a much bigger balance sheet through the 90/10 or through the 80/20 requirement on price, which makes lowest price the determining factor. In essence, the triple PFA does not provide any preferential treatment to startups or black SMMEs and cooperatives that as it is, it fails to give them a competitive edge. ESCOM. Yes, I'm taking your tone. This ESCOM is the ESCOM that never, ever looked after the rural places. It used to go and skip many areas to go and supply Kukemur with electricity. So today's ESCOM is struggling a little bit because it is looking after many, many South Africans.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Mabashi. Thank you very much.
High Secretary budget speech one. Asusumeta.
Honorable Minister, can you come and respond?
I'm sure everybody who can see me right now here in this hall and at home, they are aware of the fact that I'm very, very wide awake. I've been awake from the day that I was appointed. I will be awake until I'm comfortable with the mandate that was given to me and my department and everybody to improve the lives of ordinary South Africans through small and medium enterprises and cooperatives. The good thing about it, Chairperson, is that I was built by an organization that is very acceptable when it comes to constructive criticism. We have, in the committee, Chairperson, indicated at all times, even to the opposition, that we have an ear to listen to them because we believe South Africa belongs to all. And that when people are being constructive in assisting us to create a better South Africa, we will always listen. And I am one of those who's always willing to listen. We work with a very open mind, Chairperson. It is also for this reason that we have patiently sat in all committee meetings, because we knew that members of that committee are so committed to assisting us as a department to be better and be able to deliver to our people. I'd also like to respond to a very important area that is of informal traders, which members of the Portfolio Committee, but also members from the organizations of informal traders have had serious discussions with ourselves. We want to say that we will expedite the implementation of the National Informal Business Upliftment Strategy, because we believe that working together with local government structures and provincial structures is the only way that we can be able to deal with this, considering the fact that informal traders need infrastructure, and infrastructure that also has to be provided for by local government structures. Chairperson, we've also listened to the Portfolio Committee with regard to the development of cooperatives. And we hear you, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, and we believe that through cooperatives, we can be able to reduce the number of people who depend on social grants. I don't think that any South African who is capable of providing for their families would like to remain bekhongezela kuyi-government ngaso sonke isikhathi. I think that is also an insult to the people of South Africa, and particularly those that were never brought into the mainstream of the economy, to think that all they want is to wait for government grants. I know, as a matter of fact, that I was brought up by a grandmother who did everything she could in her power to make sure that I went to school, to make sure that...
Ngiyabonga sihlalo. Bakithi ngicela kancane ngapha bengiyibuzela ku minister lapha yana ukuthi uthini ngalama malls agcwele emalokishini abantu abamnyama asewise bhu ama tuck shop abantu angaxhaswa ngenziwa lutho. Uthini ngalabo abantu abadayisa emadolobheni abagxoshwa daily ngizwe iphutha manje manithi nina nilo labantu abanyama ngiyabonga.
Mhlonishwa Mhlonishwa bekuba ngcono uba ububambe iqhaza ke nawe la kwinkulumo mpikiswano. Bengicabanga ukuthi mhlawumbe wena ulethe point of order. Uminister masevala akufuneka ama question. Usiyavala because they've allowed you enough space to pose question and do otherwise. But we have allowed you, Honorable Kaula. Honorable Minister.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu Chairperson. Ngifuna ukusho Chairperson ukuthi entrepreneurship has become a buzzword today in South Africa. There are people who now believe and see the possibility that they do not have to go and look for a job because the government decided to create a ministry that can at least be their voice and give them and create a conducive environment for that. Ngifuna ukusho ke Chairperson ukuthi lo mbuzo nje oqeda ukubuzwa manje ngiye ngawuphendula kuyi speech, and I'm sure ukuthi honorable member angasithatha leyo speech asibheke ngoba ngikhulumile ngalento akhuluma ngayo. We have in our midst Chairperson Khosi Yabagatla Bagafela, Khosi Nyalala Pilane and his advisor Mr. Andrew Peto. We want to say to them, thank you for the good work that you are doing in Moruleng. We have visited the area and we hope that many of our people, especially our chiefs, will be able to look at that model and begin to see what can happen in their areas. We also would like to thank Roslyn Kosi, President of SA Spaza and Tuck Shop Association, who is here today, who helped us a lot when we were dealing with the situation in Soweto. Last but not least, Chairperson, in thanking my staff, I must tell you they are slave drivers. They drive me all the time to work, more than I'm supposed to work. I wish to thank them for all the support they've given me, but also I'd like to thank the former acting DG, Pumla Ngapai, who assisted us in setting up this department. And we can say to all South Africans listening at home, we are here for you. We will give it the best shot as we promised, given the mandate by the African National Congress. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. That concludes the debate and the business of this Extended Public Committee. The committee will now rise. Thank you, Honorable Members, for your contribution.